Hello and welcome at the Sabina studio here in Hackney Wick in East London. It's all-in-one studio and I will give you a little tour. Sabina is all about consciousness, storytelling, and innovation. We offer sustainable products and conscious experiences, and that's why this place is perfect for us. We have our manufacturing unit here, we have our desks where we work and design, a community area where we can hang out together, and of course, this beautiful retail space. So customers can come and visit us, meet the entire team, shop, as well as take part in our workshops. Hi, my name is Sabina and today we will have a workshop to see how we can turn pre-loved items into something new. I think we all have these clothes at home where we're not sure what to do with it anymore. Probably we don't like the fit, maybe they're not in a good condition anymore so we can't pass them on or donate them. Maybe there's something faulty with it. So what to do with that piece of fabric? I want to show you some examples today of how you can cut up these items and turn them into something new. In that particular workshop, I'll be working on a skirt, a sample that we don't require anymore, and turn it into a crochet scrunchie. But you could actually use anything. It can be a t-shirt, a pair of trousers, or maybe even a piece of fabric from a curtain that you don't need anymore. And you can also turn it in any type of crochet or knitted accessories. So today it will be a lot about the technique that you can use for that. You will need your sample, your garment, your piece of fabric. Then you will need a pair of scissors, preferably fabric scissors. You will need a crochet hook. You choose the size, depending on the accessory you will be working on. Then it will be helpful to have markers, and these could actually be safety pins as well. And because I will be working on a scrunchie, I also got an elastic. To get started, grab your scissors and identify the seams on the garment you have chosen. So in my case, because it's a skirt, I have side seams. I'm starting with one of the side seams and I'll make sure to cut through it to open it up just exactly where the side seam is. It might be a bit scary, but you just do it, go along and cut across your side seam to make sure that you keep the fabric as flat as possible. And now do that across all the seams of your garment. Depending on the garment, you will have more or less seams to cut through. After you separated everything at the seams, you will have flat fabric pieces. In my case, this is a part of the skirt. It looks like that. So I got rid of the waist, I got rid of the bottom hem and obviously opened the side seams. So now I have a flat fabric that I can work with. What we want to do now is cut it in strips. So it is a bit time consuming, but that will help you to create yarn in the end. Take a pair of scissors, lie your fabric as flat as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect though, and don't worry about it being a bit wrinkly, so no need to iron it. And then you just start cutting strips. I suggest them to be around 1.5 or 2 centimeters wide. And while it doesn't have to be perfect, make sure that you try to make it even. So all the strips you're cutting are more or less the same width. And as I said, that's going to be a bit time consuming, but also fun. So you just go through all the fabric you have after cutting up your garment and you cut them into strips, just like this. We are ready for our next step. So now you've cut your fabric into strips, and what we want to do next is putting them together. You take one of the strips, You take another one, and it doesn't matter which one, so any of these, and you start putting them together by knotting them. You knot it once, you knot it twice, you pull it so it's secure, and you move on to the next one. Grab another one, and then you knot it once, you knot it one more time, make it last, and move on to the next one. You want to do that with all of the strips that you have. What we are doing here is creating yarn that then you can use to make your crochet or knitted accessories. So we went from a fully made finished garment to cutting it up in strips and separating the fabric basically to make yarn out of it. So you see, basically back to square one, and then this yarn, fake yarn, can be used to make accessories. Please continue doing that until you've finished knotting all your strips. I've knotted all of the strips together, and that's what it looks like. But that's a bit of a mess. I want it to be a bit more organized and easier to handle. That's why we will create a little ball like this. You'll just roll all your fabric strips up so it looks like that, and it's easier to handle. I already started here a little bit, so I will continue. Don't worry about the knots that you have, where you have the strips being attached together. Just ignore them for now and keep rolling it up so all this mess gets into that ball and you have your own ball of yarn to start your crochet scrunchie. Now on to the exciting part. We are starting the crochet bit. Choose one of your crochet hooks. I'll go with a 6mm one for this scrunchie, and I will also need my elastic. I might not need my markers for now, so I'll keep them aside. And now you're taking your ball out of fabric strips, and you start using it just like you would use a yarn. So forget that it's actually fabric and treat it like you would treat yarn when you start crocheting. We want to start with a loop. But then you take it off to put the elastic on top first. So you put the elastic on your crochet hook, then you put the loop back on the crochet hook. And now what you want to do is you want to trap the elastic in between by doing a single crochet slip stitch. And that's what it will look like. So now you have your fabric yarn, you have your crochet hook here, and the elastic that is trapped. That is step one. Next, what you want to do is you want to chain 3. So you're going up, you chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. This counts as your first double crochet. And now you will continue working double crochets across your scrunchie elastic to make sure that you keep trapping that elastic bit and you keep working around it. This will be the first inner round of your scrunchie. So let's start. Yarn over, go into the center of the elastic to create your double crochet. It might be a bit tricky in the beginning to get used to the fact that you are crocheting with fabric, but you will get there. It's just a bit weird in the beginning because it doesn't feel like proper yarn, but you will get there. So you see, I've done the first double crochet. You yarn over, go into the center of your elastic, loop once, loop a second time, and you have your next double crochet. At some point you will start coming across the knots where you put your fabric strips together. You can ignore them for now, or if you find it difficult to ignore them, you can also take your scissors and cut them. To make sure you cut the excess fabric and put it aside so the knot bit is a bit more clean and makes it easier to continue your work. You yarn over, go into the inside of your elastic and finish off your double crochet. So you want to work in double crochets across the whole elastic. And because it can be a bit tricky and difficult to actually see the stitch that I'm using when I'm showing it with the fabric strips, I will show it again using normal usual yarn, so you can just follow along a bit easier. So when you're starting off, you have your first loop that you started off in the usual way. There are different ways of starting that. That's basically knotting it together if you find that too complicated. And then imagine that being your elastic. So you're taking that first loop down, putting it aside, putting the elastic on top of your crochet hook first, and then putting that first loop back on the crochet hook. So that's how it looks like before you start going around your elastic band. Again, imagine this being your elastic. And now what you want to do is you want to trap your elastic between the yarn and the loop and do a slip stitch, which means that you're pushing and then pulling it through that loop, closing it, creating a new loop. Then you start with your double crochets first, but to do that you have to chain 3. Chain 3 means just doing 3 simple chain stitches, 1, 2, and 3. And that's what it looks like. So you have your elastic here, you trap the elastic through a slip stitch, and then you chained 3. And here is where you start with your double crochets, and they work this way. You yarn over, having that yarn extra on top of your crochet hook, you go into the middle of your elastic, pull the yarn through so that you have 3 loops on your crochet hook. You connect the first 2 loops together and then the next 2 loops together. This is your double crochet. Let's do it again. You yarn over, you go through the center of your elastic, you pull the yarn, you have 3 loops on your crochet hook now. You first connect the first 2, and now you're connecting the other 2. That's your double crochet. Let's try it again. You yarn over, go into the center of your elastic, pull the yarn out. You have now 3 loops on your crochet hook. You want to connect the first 2 and now the next 2. And that's what it looks like. So you see, we started off here, we chained 3, we've done the first double crochet, second, third, and we will continue that way until we go around the whole elastic band. So we have just completed step 1. We've crocheted around the elastic. You can't see the elastic anymore, but you have some parts now where the knots will be quite visible. Don't worry about it. We can just take our scissors and cut away the extra bits of fabric that are in our way or where we think it's not too pretty. But having said that, I actually really like the effect of the fabric, losing some of the little threads. I think it looks quite nice and gives it a special touch. So you can see it's not normal yarn that you used, it's yarn that you made yourself from a garment that you cut into strips. So once you have that, you want to close it at the front. So you've finished your first row. That's what it looks like. And don't worry, I will show it again using normal yarn so you can see the stitch easier. But what you want to do now is remember that first 3 chain stitches you've done. You want to go into that upper stitch in order to close the row with a slip stitch. And again, it will be a bit tricky working with this type of yarn because it's actually fabric. And that's what it looks like. So now you closed it, you're ready and finished with your first row. You want to now do the second row. To do that, we will start in a very similar manner. I see a knot is coming up. I'm going to cut it short so it's neater. And you start again with 3 chain stitches, the same way you've done it on your first row. So now we will chain 1, 2, and 3. And you continue with double crochets, just like you've done before. The only difference is that you will now work this double crochets into the same stitch. And by stitch, I mean this braid at the top. You see, when you crochet, you will have this braid pattern on the edge of your scrunchie, and each braid is one stitch. So you want to identify that and go into it. We already know how to do the double crochet. You yarn over, you go into that stitch, you pull the fabric, connect 2 loops in the next 2 loops. And again, don't worry, I will show it again with yarn, so it's easier to identify the stitch. So you have now 2 double crochets in 1 stitch. You move on to the next one and do 3 double crochets, but in the same stitch. And here you can actually use your markers, because I know sometimes people find it confusing to identify the stitch and to know where they're going to. So you can use your marker. Once you identified that stitch, put your marker in. So now you know this is where you'll be working into. Take your crochet hook, you go into that marked area. Oh, sorry, I forgot to yarn over. You yarn over, go into the marked area. Got a bit too excited that I know where to go to. And then you pull your yarn, you do 1, connecting the 2 loops, and 2, connecting the other 2 loops. Now you know you went there once, you want to do 2 more times. Yarn over into that marked loop, and you finish off your double crochet. This was number 2, and you do the 3rd time. Yarn over in that marked loop. And again, don't worry if it's sometimes a bit hard to get that fabric through, simply because it's not normal yarn. It can be a bit tricky because it's a bit thicker on some of the parts. And you finish your double crochet. So now you went 2 times into the 1st stitch, 3 times into the 2nd stitch. And that's your pattern for the 2nd row. You do 2 double crochets, 3 double crochets, 2 double crochets, 3 double crochets. And you use your marker to help you identify what the stitches that you're working on. I will show you the same thing now with the actual normal yarn, so you understand the stitch better, and we will return to this. So let's look into the stitch to understand it in a bit better way. You see, I've done the same thing like we've done on our actual piece, and I finished the row. Now you want to connect it with a slip stitch. You're going into the number 3 stitch that we've done at the chain stitch at the very first row, and you do a slip stitch to connect it. So visually you can see what I've done. I've closed the whole circle. You are now ready for your row 2. And remember, I told you that stitches, you can identify them by looking at the braid that you have at the outer area of your scrunchie. You see, on this yarn, you can actually beautifully see now, this is the braid. And each section of the braid is 1 stitch. So what you want to do now is you chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. And you will work in the same double crochets, but doing 2 double crochet in 1 stitch, 3 in the next one, 2 in the next one, 3 in the next one, 2 in the next one, and so on. So it's a 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 pattern. We already have 1. We do yarn over, go into the same stitch, pull it. Remember, we have 3 loops for a double crochet. We do this, and then we do that. And this is how a double crochet is made. We have 2. Now, let's identify the next one. You see the next braid is here. So you want to be working into this one. And remember, we used a marker. We can do that again. So I will be marking my stitch. And remember that I need to work 3 times into the whole of this stitch. 3 double crochets. So let's do it. Yarn over, go in, pull out, connect, connect. Yarn over, go into the stitch, pull out, do yarn over, so, and you do it once again, going a bit faster now because you've learned the double crochet stitch, so you know how to do it. You see, so we've done 2 in 1 stitch, 3 in the next one, taking the marker out, identifying the next stitch we'll be working on, which is this one, putting the marker in, knowing we'll have to work 2 double crochets into this one. And we continue. This is the first double crochet. This is the second double crochet. This stitch is done. Moving on to the next one, taking out the marker, identifying the next stitch, knowing we have to do 3 double crochets now. So you see the pattern, it's 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, and you continue in that manner using your markers to help you. But if you don't need it, of course, then don't use them, then just go along and do 2 double crochets in one stitch, 3 in the next stitch, and again 2 double crochets in the next stitch, 3 double crochet stitches in the next stitch. So you just do that until you finish the full round, and that will start creating a very beautiful wavy texture, so your scrunchie will start taking shape. I will go back to our actual scrunchie and finish off the row as well. For everyone who is still here following along, well done. I know that crochet can be a bit tricky in the beginning and you need some patience for it, but it's definitely worth it. So once you've completed your second row, this is how your project looks like. So you're almost done, you can't see the elastic anymore, and you have a crochet scrunchie. To finish off, you do the same thing you've done when you finished your first row. You want to connect the open parts with a slip stitch. So you go into the beginning, you do a slip stitch, then you can do a second stitch just to be secure, everything's good. You cut your yarn and you pull it out to make sure it's secure. You see, I actually have plenty of fabric yarn left, so I could do another project and maybe mixing it with some of the existing strips that I have here. I'll think about that later. And for the scrunchie, you can choose if you like the effect of these knots coming out and you want to leave that as part of your project, or if you think that you don't want it to be that messy, then in this case, take your scissors and cut these bits away. So you will just go over all of these and cut the ones you don't like. Again, if it's part of your project, because maybe like if you're crocheting a bag, it could look quite cute if that's part of it, and then you want to leave them out, or some of the fabrics will obviously react differently and look differently. So whatever fabric you used, your scrunchie looks very different from mine, and that's the beautiful part of it. You're creating unique items because the starting point was unique as well. It's not the same for all of us. We all worked with a different garment that we took apart. So of course then our final looks quite different as well. I'm almost done with cutting all my extra bits. The only thing I have left now is the finishing of it. And then you do it like with every crochet project. You can hide it by pulling it through some of the braid stitches at the top. Like this. And then cutting that as well. And ta-da! From skirt to scrunchie. This was the workshop to learn how to turn your pre-loved garments and items into crocheted or knitted accessories. I've turned a skirt into a crochet scrunchie and I'm already wearing it. And that's just an example, because obviously you can turn any type of garment that is damaged or stained, or you can't use it as a garment anymore, and create any type of accessories. Be creative with it. Maybe a headband like this. Here I mixed the yarns together, so I had some normal yarn and I had some of the fabric yarn that I created. I put it together and crocheted a little headband. Or you can do a basket like that. This one is done using normal yarn, but this could be easily done using the fabric yarn that we created in our today's workshop as well. Or you can work in tiny pieces and crocheting little flowers or hearts or stars like this. You can make jewelry out of it, or you can put loads of them next to each other and create bigger objects and accessories like bags. Just be creative, think about all the options that you have. Remember that your item will also look different depending on what garment you cut up and used, and definitely share it with us. I can't actually wait to see all your projects.